Hello, I'm Jeff Cavins, and today we're looking at the readings for the 8th Sunday in Ordinary Time. You know, as we live our lives, so often we are pulled in multiple directions. What are we going to do first? What are the priorities in our lives? If we don't set priorities in our lives, we're apt to go for the first thing that ends up on our schedule. There's a term for it. It's called the tyranny of the urgent. We're always taking care of urgent things, and we're not taking care of the things that are really important in our lives. And as a consequence, we live disintegrated lives. We're going after this and we're going after that, but we're really not accomplishing the priorities in our life. Jesus talks about priorities in this week's readings, and he starts off in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 6, part of the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." In other words, you cannot serve God and at the same time serve your own life or serve money or the God of money and success and power. We have to make up our mind what's going to come first. In the first reading this week in Isaiah chapter 49, God tells us what's on his mind. He says to us, "I will never forget you. I will never forget you." And the question that I have is, have you forgotten him in the course of making decisions on a daily basis? Jesus teaches us something about priorities. He says, I have not forgotten you, and he puts us first, and now we are called to put him first. Jesus says, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor about your body, what you shall put on." And then he goes on and says, "Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing?" And then he uses some examples from nature. He says, "Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they?" Now, this is actually a rabbinic method of teaching in the first century that Jesus uses, as well as other rabbis, and that is starting with the simple and going to the complex, or starting with the small and going to the large. And the small is, hey, he's taking care of the birds. How much more is he going to take care of you? And which of you, being anxious, can add 1 cubit to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. He goes on and says, "But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, don't be anxious, saying, 'What shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear?' For the Gentiles seek all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need all of them." And then here comes the key to his lesson. He says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." You see, the priority in our life is to seek Christ first. And if you are seeking God and mammon, or serving God and mammon, seeking God and the things of this world, it will lead to anxiety in your life. One of the greatest antidotes to the anxiety that we experience in our lives is to land on one master, and that is Jesus. And so, how do we seek God first? How do we put God first? Well, I would suggest to you that on a daily basis, number one, we have to ask ourselves, what is the most important thing today? What is the priority? Prayer. To spend a little time with God at the beginning of the day to set your day. Number two, Bible study. To read the Bible and to hear from God on a regular basis. And three, a sacramental life. Make sure you go to Mass as often as you can. Make sure that you go to confession, and make sure that you are living in right standing with God. If you'll do that, it's amazing how anxiety goes away. It's amazing how peace enters your heart, knowing that God's not going to forget about you. And our response, "Lord, I'm not going to forget about you either." Resist the temptation to worship and follow multiple leaders and make Jesus truly the Lord of your life. Worry is tied to two masters. Peace comes from following one, and that is Jesus Christ.